Today in this video, I want to start off by addressing the white elephant in the room. The white elephant. That sounds kind of racist. The elephant in the room, which is my beard. It's thick, it's bushy, it's red, and it's annoying. But the reason why I've grown it so long, as long as I've ever had it, the longest you guys have ever seen it, is because it's wintertime outside. I work outside, cold air against the face, not cool. This is like the natural balaclava, and for the wintertime, I love it. But it's going to be coming off in about a month or so once it warms up. So just thought I would address that first. The other question you guys are probably asking is, Ryan, why haven't you done any fish tank videos in such a long time? It's like, well, this channel really isn't about fish tanks, but I feel like it kind of ties into my channel a little bit because I do planted tanks. That's plants, and I grow plants. This is called Growing Answers. So I thought I would start answering a few questions. This video is kind of about shrimp more specifically. I'll talk a little bit about the plants and stuff I've been growing as well. So let's just get right into it. So I thought I would just make kind of an easy video today. I'm not going to go through a whole lot of editing here, just show you maybe some B-roll here of this and that. But mainly what I want to talk about here is two things. The main thing is keeping shrimp, and the second thing is algae. And these tie in together, and you'll see why in a little bit when I start talking a little more about what the whole point of this video is. So I've been trying to keep Neocaridina shrimp for quite some time, more specifically red cherry shrimp. And a little more specifically is either Sakura, fire grade, or painted fire red. Right now this colony in this tank is painted fire red, and they are very cool looking shrimp. I got these from Aquatic Arts. That's where I've been getting my shrimp from every time. However, I will say that anytime the shrimp have died has not been the fault of Aquatic Arts. Their shrimp are really good quality shrimp. They're healthy. It has been mostly my fault, sort of. So I want to talk about what that is and what's been going on. So for the past year or so, I've been trying to keep shrimp. I would buy them. I would get them shipped in. They'd be all alive in the bag. I'd put them in the water after I slowly acclimate them by drip acclimation, and slowly they would start dying. Over a period of about a week, 2 to 3 weeks at most, they would pretty much all be gone. They would just die. And what I've noticed is not so much an issue where they just randomly die. It seems like it was related to molting. So first thing I was thinking of was probably it's a calcium deficiency. They can't come out of their shells. They can't molt. So I started using a product that would, I think it was Seachem Equilibrium, which adds more calcium into the water. That didn't work. So I'm going to go through a couple things here really quick. I went through all kinds of stuff, all kinds of processes to try to make the best environment possible to keep shrimp, mainly the dwarf shrimp type. I have a mono shrimp in my other 55-gallon tank, which I've been doing fine, and that's tap water, no problem at all. But anytime I've tried the dwarf shrimp, I've had very, very, very poor success, completely poor. So I tried all this different stuff. I tried I have filtered water. It's filtered through carbon. I've tried using prime. I've tried doing all kinds of stuff. I have test kits that measure everything from GH to KH, nitrates, nitrites, ammonia. I have a TDS pen. I have a copper tester to see if there's any copper in the water because that will kill shrimp. I've done all this stuff, and all my parameters were perfectly ideal to keep shrimp. Never worked out. I just could not figure it out. I was ready to give up. So this is like my 4th batch of shrimp that I've gotten, and these have been in here for a while now, and not a single one has died. Not even one showing any kind of problems either. They're all moving around, they're grazing, they're active, which is good. All acting completely normal. But the reason for this is because I changed the water type I've been using. Because this is only a 10-gallon tank, technically there's not really 10 gallons in here if you consider the displacement with like the big rock and the substrate and the filter media. It's probably closer to 8 gallons. But what I started doing is instead of keeping my shrimp in my big 55-gallon tank where it's pretty much all tap water, I started my own separate tank, which is just for shrimp. There's actually some otocinclus in here as well, but that's not really considered a fish tank. They're just in there to graze on some algae for the most part. There's also some Malaysian trumpet snails in here as well. I think there's 2 or 3. But for the most part, this is the species-only tank for the shrimp, the painted fire red grade I have in here. So what I did to be successful is I slowly transitioned over to distilled water. This stuff here, You can get it anywhere pretty much. It was only 89 cents, I think, where I got it from, and super cheap. So I do 10%, roughly 10% water changes, which is basically 1 gallon per week. Very, very simple. All I gotta do is I gotta take one of these old containers. I use a tube, siphon it out. Once this is full, I dump that out and I dump the fresh stuff in. But I don't just dump in the distilled water alone, because you can't keep shrimp in pure water. They need calcium. So I use this shrimp mineral. This is from Salty Shrimp, GHKH+. This is basically the perfect balance between those two. And what I do is I take 1/4 teaspoon of this and put it in that gallon of water. And it has to be perfect. When you measure out the 1/4 teaspoon, it can't have a heap on it, can't have a divot in it, because that will change the TDS quite a bit by just a little bit of fluctuation in how much you're putting in there. It needs to be exact. But that's what I use to remineralize the water. That way I know what's going into this tank. And it is amazing that I haven't lost a single shrimp. They're all perfectly fine. And the other tank, like I said, I have a mono shrimp in the tap water, but those are pretty hardy shrimp. For some reason, they're fine. But I've never had any success with a dwarf cherry shrimp, red cherry shrimp, with the tap water I have in my house, no matter what I did. If I forgot to mention something in this video, by the way, just leave it in the comments. I'll answer the question. Maybe I'll pin it if I have to. So what I have in this tank, I'm going to just talk about a couple of things here for those of you who want to stick around and kind of want to know what I've done to maybe grow some of the plants, what kind of plants I have growing in here. So I use EcoComplete in my other 55-gallon tank, and I have a couple of heavy root feeding plants in there, and they don't really do all that great in the EcoComplete. There's just not enough stuff in that substrate to kind of support them, so I have to use root tabs every now and then. I do add stuff to my water column as well, which I'll also talk about in a second. But I started using for this tank this fluval stratum, and this does buffer the pH, but I didn't put shrimp in this tank right away. This stuff's only going to last for maybe if you're lucky, up to a year of buffering capacity. After that, it won't affect your pH at all. So I did make sure that there was no pH buffer going on. I also added some crushed coral to the filter to also balance out the pH before I did any of this stuff. So once I had the tank kind of going and cycling and everything, I actually started off with some otosynchus in there. I had about 12 of them in there, and some of them they died. That's just natural for otosynchus because they're usually wild caught. But there's 2 left in here now. But I put those in there to kind of keep the tank cycled before I added shrimp. And I also, I checked everything. I checked the pH all the time to make sure it was staying stable. And once everything was kind of good and going, and that, by the way, it did start off with tap water, I started switching over slowly to the distilled water that I remineralized. And one thing that I noticed also while doing that was, if you look at the bottom of the tank, I have Monte Carlo growing in here. And it's basically kind of like a carpeting vine with tiny leaves, if you don't know what that is. It's very similar to dwarf baby tears, if you want to kind of relate it to something. But yeah, it's growing along here very well. And when it started out with the tap water, it had a lot of brown algae growing on it. Just enough to kind of cover the leaves so that they're not getting enough light, and kind of slow their growth down a lot. That brown algae is diatom algae. It's technically not really an algae at all, it's just diatoms. And the reason why diatoms grow are for 2 main things. Light doesn't really affect diatoms. In fact, it can grow in almost pretty much darkness, but I guess it depends on the type. I'm talking about the brown diatoms. And phosphates is one thing, and also silica. So in tap water, you're going to have a lot of silica, or not a lot of silica, but enough silica for those diatoms to kind of just explode. So every time you do a water change, you're putting more silica back into the water, causing more diatoms to spread and cover everything. As soon as I started switching over to the distilled water, right here, and remineralizing it, after a period of about a month and a half of finally switching all the volume of water in this tank out to distilled remineralized water, all that brown diatom algae, if you want to call it that, it pretty much went away. There's almost no brown algae growing on those leaves anymore at all, and it's actually growing a lot better now. And also, there's a little bit of green spot algae on the glass, but You know, you're going to get some kind of algae in any tank anyways. It's not going to completely go away just because you switch to a different type of water, whether it's RO or rainwater. So yeah, that's what I got going in there. And I also have, there is some, what do you call it? It's moss growing in the back there, flame moss. I just put that in there a couple weeks ago because I knew I was going to have, you know, more shrimp in the tank, and they're going to breed, and they're going to need places for the babies to hang out. So I do have that in there. And in the back there's also a crypt. I don't remember the exact name of the crypt, but there is a crypt growing in the back behind that rock, which hasn't really started growing a lot until recently. It's starting to put out some more leaves. Crypts are like that. They take a while to kind of establish and grow. So the reason why I haven't made videos in a while about aquariums or plants in aquariums or anything in the fish tank is because mostly on my channel I've been doing a lot of grow tests and all that. And I'm kind of in between tests right now. I'm not really in between, but I got other stuff going on, and I wanted to put out a video. And the reason why I haven't really done a lot of fish tank videos on my channel is because although I've been keeping aquariums for about 15 or so years now, I don't really feel like I have the knowledge and information to put out there that I can do in confidence. Because, you know, people can keep fish tank for 20, 30, 40, 50 years and still not know everything about it. But I kind of felt like I needed to go through my own phases and kind of see what happens, because there's so many variables involved when you're keeping a fish tank. And aquariums can be different across the board because everyone's tap water is different. People have different things in their aquarium. You could have different types of algae in your aquarium. There's just so many variables, and all I can really talk about is my own experience over time. So I kind of wanted to kind of put out a video now because I've kind of had this epiphany, if you will, about keeping these shrimp and also algae. So the last thing I want to kind of talk about is if you do have brown algae in your tank, which is not algae, it's diatoms. If you do have that in your tank, and you're doing large water changes with tap water, you probably have enough silica in your tap water to cause a diatom bloom. Now, everyone's situation is going to be different. I'm only speaking from my own experience. But if you do large water changes and you do that often, say once a week or once every other week, you're putting more silica in the water, and the diatoms love the silica. And phosphates too. The phosphates alone aren't really going to cause your diatoms to explode, but the silica will. They eat that stuff up. And once that's all taken up, it goes away on its own. So if you just do less water changes, you're going to have better success. So if you change out less water, you don't necessarily have to change the frequency of it. You can do, you know, once every 2 weeks still is fine, or once a month is fine, but do in lower volumes. But don't take this as like, you know, the end-all be-all to everything, because if you do that and your tank is completely different, you might have a lot of stock in your tank and you might need to do more higher volume water changes. But if you don't have a lot of stock in your tank, you don't have a lot of livestock, I mean, and you want to do less water changes, it's probably not going to hurt anything. In fact, a lot of times once a tank is established, the less you do to it, the better, it seems like. As long as everything is kept clean and you're consistent with the lessening of things, it's going to help out more in the long run. That's what I've found anyways. The less you do sometimes, the better. So that's it for this video. I hope there was enough information there to help those people out kind of wondering, how can I be successful keeping shrimp? How can I get rid of algae? Well, these are the tips that I have for you. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.